Welcome to the Insight Meditation community of Charlottesville, Virginia. You can find all of our program offerings and information about our Sangha at www.imeditation.org. We meet weekly on Tuesday evenings at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, currently on the Zoom platform for meditation and a Dharma talk given by one of our teachers. We also meet daily at noon Eastern Time on Zoom for sitting practice. We hope you can join us.
So tonight, I wanted to offer part 4. I think this is going to be the last part of this series of talks that were initiated by some wonderful questions. There was one question that began it, and then a whole series of thoughts and questions and observations that you all have sent to me, which was really lovely and helpful and kind of framing an inquiry. And the inquiry was really a very deep one that had to do with, the original inquiry had to do with relationship and how do we navigate the teachings on loving kindness and compassion when relationships are really difficult, and sometimes perhaps even abusive. How how do we navigate this? And so I tried to offer in the earlier talks just some background, some ways of kind of understanding, where things can get kind of wonky in relationship and why, and how our how the Buddhist teachings and our practice can really inform us a bit. And then one of the sets of questions had to do with boundaries and loving kindness and how do you work with that? So I thought it might be fun to work with that a little bit more tonight. Where does loving kindness, how do you navigate kindness and compassion? And then, where does that end in codependence and somehow being passive or indulgent? Where does that start? How do we consider boundaries in the realm of letting go and selflessness? And how does that all work? So some of that we've talked about a bit in the previous talks, but we wanted to explore a little bit more tonight. So as you know, the traditional practice of loving kindness kind of goes through a bit of a sequence. There's, offering loving kindness for ourselves. There's offering loving kindness for a dearly beloved, someone who's really close and easy to love. Offering loving kindness for a benefactor, for a neutral person, for a person who we find more difficult, and then finally for a person that we might even consider an enemy. So I want to pause for a moment. I'd like to ask you to take your piece of paper and populate, if you will, that list. Who are those beings for you tonight? We kind of know about the self, maybe, but and just write it down. So the dearly loved one. Who comes to your mind tonight as you consider someone who is beloved, and it could be an animal. Who is a dearly loved one, and then who would you consider a benefactor? Someone maybe who's been a guide or a teacher, who perhaps still is, or maybe was in the past in some way. Who would that being be? Very specific, you name them. Oh, Frank, that was who that was. And that's who it is for me tonight. Ordinarily I think of somebody else, but for some reason tonight I think of Frank. Okay. And then who's the neutral person? So oddly, that can sometimes be rather difficult to think, who is the neutral person? Who's the person who I kind of don't feel too much one way or the other about? I passed someone in my walk today, it's like, oh, maybe for me today, that person was be my neutral person. And then, okay, today, who's the person you find difficult today? Anybody you find a little challenging? Could be someone close, could be someone in the news. And then who's somebody who you might consider an enemy? That's kind of a strong word, perhaps, but someone who maybe even goes beyond difficult, who, really, really hard to wish that person well. Just kind of watching to see who's still writing and just checking you out here. Give you time. Okay. Now there's a traditional practice that you may know that that is offered, and the practice goes something like this. It's imagine that you're out walking, and you're walking with all of these people. You're walking with your beloved and your benefactor and the neutral person and the difficult person and the enemy. You're all just out there, walking down the path together. And this bandit comes up and says to you, okay, I'm going to kill one of you. And you have to pick which one that will be. You tell me who I should kill, who I should, hurt. You just pick one. Or my own current version of that practice is the little coronavirus guy comes up with the little pointy red things and says, okay, I'm going to take one of you out. And you get to pick which one that will be. Who will that be? So I'm just going to invite you to contemplate for a moment. Here's this, it's a traditional practice taught by the Buddha. Here's this, practice. How do you do that? What do you do? What comes up for you? But here's the Metta Sutta. Here's the guidance we get from the Buddha about this dilemma. And this is, the sutta, and I'll just read to you a part of it, which I know you know. In gladness and in safety, may all beings be at ease. Whatever living beings there may be, the Buddha says, whether they are weak or strong, omitting none, the great or the mighty, medium, short, or small, the seen and the unseen, those living near and far away, those born and to be born, may all beings be at ease. Let none deceive another or despise any being in any state. Let none through anger or ill will wish harm upon another. Even as a mother protects with her life her child, her only child, so with a boundless heart should one cherish all living beings. So with a boundless heart should one cherish all living beings, radiating kindness over the entire world, spreading upwards to the skies and downwards to the depths, outward and unbounded, freed from hatred and ill will. So that's what the Buddha says about it all. He says it's actually just not possible to decide. Which then brings us right back to our own dilemma. It's like, so really? All these people, all these, the enemy, the difficult person, the neutral person, myself, benefactor, they're all the same? Really? They're all the same? Well, and that kind of maybe, that takes us back, I think, in one of the talks I talked about, just this ground of being where there just is no separation. But that's another talk, you know. So it arises out of that sense that, there's this, really? We're all the same? Now remember, the original question that led to this whole series of talks was about, yeah, but what about somebody who's abusive? How do how do how do you do this? What about that politician? I read about that politician has COVID. May you be filled with goodness and well-being. Really? So I think in one of the talks, I said something like, if you're not confused, you're not paying attention. So I would offer that again here. It can sometimes seem that confusion is a mistake, but maybe if we're not confused, we're not really quite inquiring deeply enough. Or as the Buddha might say, what am I believing that might not be true? U Pandita says the difficulties Westerners face in learning meditation is our attachment to lofty ideas. So how do we solve this? How do we work with this? And so I wanted to turn to the three kinds of wisdom that maybe can help us a little bit here. So we hear the teachings, we listen to the teachings, we listen to the Metta Sutta, and we listen with the idea that we will learn something. There's another sutta called the Sati, S-A-T-T-I Sutta. I'll read to you this one. It's also about loving kindness. And the Buddha says, monks, suppose there were a sharp-bladed spear, and a man were to come along saying, with my hand or fist, I will bend back this sharp-bladed spear, fold it in two, I'll roll it up. What do you think? Would that man be able with his hand or fist to bend back that sharp-bladed spear, fold it in two, and roll it up? No, Lord. Well, why is that? Because a sharp-bladed spear isn't easy to bend back, fold in two, or roll up. The man who tried would simply reap his share of trouble and vexation. In the same way, monks, when a monk's awareness release through goodwill is cultivated, developed, pursued, handed the reins, and taken as a basis, given a grounding, studied, consolidated, and well undertaken. That's a lot, when a monk's awareness released through goodwill is cultivated, developed, pursued, handed the reins, and taken as a basis, given a grounding, steadied, consolidated, and well undertaken. Any non-human being who would think of possessing that monk's mind would simply reap his share of trouble and vexation. Thus, you should train yourselves. Our awareness released through goodwill will be cultivated, developed, pursued, handed the reins, and taken as a basis, given a grounding, steadied, consolidated, and well undertaken. He says that's how you should train yourselves. Okay, so this is that's the teaching. We hear the teaching. Okay, all right, fair enough. And then the traditional phrases, uh, the traditional phrases of this loving kindness practice have to do with one is sort of a general, may all beings be filled with kindness and goodness. The second layer is often like, may you have physical well being, may you be safe, free from danger, protected. The third level is, may you have some kind of mental happiness, mental ease, wisdom. And the fourth is sort of a more general, again, may you be happy. My personal, what I usually do is goes something like this. May you be filled with goodness and kindness. May you be safe, physically well, protected, free from danger. May your mind be uh, clear and at ease, and your heart open and peaceful. May you be happy. So now I'm going to ask you to pause again but write your own. And I can put, let me just see what I'll do. Let me put this in the chat box. This is sort of it's a rough outline, but really, it doesn't matter. You can just use whatever phrases you want in whatever order you want. I'm just going to ask you, these are sort of the outline that I use. Would you take a moment and for tonight, write what are the words that you want to use for your loving kindness practice? So the first kind of wisdom where we hear the teachings, and then we kind of move into the second level where we begin to reflect on the teachings, which is what you're doing here. You're reflecting. It's like, okay, what are my words here? What resonates for me? And how does this really work for me? The Buddha says, may all beings, he says, omitting none. Oh, when I reflect, I see actually my loving kindness practice goes something more like, oh, may some beings be filled with kindness and goodness. Uh, may some beings who I sort of like have physical happiness. That politician who I sort of don't like, maybe not so much. So I begin to reflect. I say, wait a minute, well, it's okay. Here's the Buddhist teaching, but here's how it kind of lands for me. We begin to reflect. How does this actually, how does this work for me? And at the second level, it's when the information begins to become knowledge. Begins to become a little bit more knowing. Here's another teaching of the Buddha that may help us. The Buddha says it's a middle path. We need to avoid, he says, extremes in our thinking. We need to kind of let go of, what does U Pandita says, that we get attached to lofty ideas. So we kind of need to let go of lofty ideas, and what am I believing that might not be true? What's a lofty idea if I bring it into the real world here? So when we come back to the original question, which is, okay, there's this abusive relationship. How does this work? How does this work? And what's the middle path here? Avoiding the extreme of myself being the only being who matters in the world, narcissism. I'm the only I'm the only person who deserves loving kindness. Or the other is would be uh, aggression against myself, really. Say I don't matter. Or for that matter, I love this person so much that I don't set any limits, or I only set limits um, depending on what I feel like, So the middle path, we begin to reflect, what's the middle path here? What is, if I'm going to bring loving kindness to all beings without exception, what's the middle path? We begin to kind of have a sense. Again, if we go back to that original question, okay, there's this abusive relationship. Can I set boundaries and still be practicing loving kindness? Well, we do it with our babies, don't we? We say, or our cats, no, darling, mm, you can't. I'm staying in somebody else's house. It's like, no, darling, you can't pull your claws on the couch. I'm so sorry. Can I offer that limit with a kind and loving heart, wishing my kitty well? This is from Tanisaro. He says, if you want to refine your understandings, you can't cling to words or texts. You have to look deeper into your present experience. It's up to you, he says, to learn through trial and error which way of conceiving the path is most useful at any particular time in your practice. And so reflection then helps us kind of decipher the code in the teachings, but we have to penetrate it. We have to really reflect in order to get it. Um, and a lot of our reflection may not go anywhere because we're actually not dropping below the turbulent surface of either kind of what's going on or our concept about either what's going on or what should be going on in my own heart, in my own being. Or in the case of our spiritual practice, we try to quickly grasp some spiritual principle rather than struggle a bit with the subtlety and paradox and confusion that really it requires a bit of struggle. And it's actually the reason why the Buddha originally thought he wouldn't teach. He said, this stuff is too hard, to penetrate. People are going to have to really reflect on it to see what's really true here. And it's a little too hard to penetrate. I think it would, what was it? Well, he didn't say it this way. My friend Sue says, it gives me a fever. It gives me a fever. Basically the Buddha said, just trying to teach will give me a fever. It just should be, that'd be too hard. How do we penetrate this? So we want to look into it, testing out how would that apply in this situation. Okay, so then we reflect. What should we try out to see how it works with respect to the dilemma of the bandit, or in my case, the COVID assault? Remembering that the point of our practice is the ending of affliction for ourselves and all others. Let's go back to that dilemma that we can contemplate there, that you have a choice to not make a choice there. I think that's what the Buddha would say. Mhm. So we reflect. Okay. Okay, so that's well and good. But then there's that third level, that third kind of wisdom when we meditate with it, and then we look to see, okay, how does, and Tanisaro's quote, is like trial and error. How does this actually work here? Okay, and we can think about where do I get stuck? And it'll be different for each of us. And it'll be different for each of us each day. Where do I get stuck on this? Some of us will get stuck in the abuse question, in that we're thinking, I have to be something here, and I can abandon myself in order to try to be loving to somebody else. No, no, all beings without exception, well, that's got to include me. Okay, so looks like maybe I need to practice a little bit more with loving kindness for myself, and perhaps a bit of compassion for how hard it is to deal with a loved one who is abusing me, who's at the moment lost their way. Ouch. That's hard. But then we meditate with it. We bring the loving kindness practice wherever it's needed. So in the Sati Sutta, remember the Buddha says, when we do all those things, when we ground and steady and consolidate and undertake it well, and is he cultivated, developed, pursued, handed the reins, taken as a basis, when we have really established loving kindness in the I'm not saying it right because I'm saying establish it, when we have connected to the ground of our being, which is that loving kindness, We actually don't have to establish it at all. We have to establish the connection to it and the remembrance of it. When that is well established, then anybody who comes along and tries to overtake our mind can't do it. They try to abuse us, and we go, get over yourself. Um, I love to, I referenced it, Pema Chodron who teaches a Tonglen practice, which is a kind of loving kindness practice, Tibetan practice. And she talks about, okay, I'm really struggling with this one. Well, okay, I could bring you a cup of tea. I could do that, or, that just something like tiny and tangible that would be offering a quality of kindness, so it's not this kind of lofty thing, but it's like, okay, well, I, I could I could do that, yeah. So great. So then you make the words, that's the meditation part, where you make the words your own. You make the words your own. What connects me to a genuine quality that is in the arena of of, of, of loving kindness. Thank you. Perfect. And remembering that loving kindness is really a quality of our own hearts. It isn't about sort of trying to fix what's out there so much as a way of touching into our own hearts in relationship. So I think that's something that you're pointing to, Carolyn, that this is quality of okay, maybe somebody really is messing up. Who is it? Oh, I can't remember now who it is. One of the teachers talks about driving in traffic and saying, may you learn how to stop at stop signs. Just, but as not so much as, you, but, may I have a bit of spaciousness. May I have a bit of spaciousness here, whatever spaciousness I can muster in this moment. Um, One other thing, just one other point I wanted to make is that sometimes, again, going back to U Pandita's thought about getting attached to lofty ideas, sometimes we can kind of, just feel like, well, we have to be able to do it all, and we have to be able to do it all always, and we have to be able to do it all perfectly. And so the challenge really is if we find ourselves kind of out there with, on, Wednesday morning with that politician that you read about in the paper, and you go, I'm stuck. I can't even, I can't even imagine at the moment bringing a cup of tea. So then we drop back to where we can find it. And it's like, okay, I can't do the enemy today. I think I'll do my cat, or I think I'll bring loving kindness. I'll spend the day offering loving kindness to all beings who can't offer loving kindness. That would include me, so that we drop back to a place of where we can navigate it with some kind of curiosity and kindness. So we don't have to kind of white knuckle it and try to force ourselves to kind of be at the very hardest moment, when that's just not where the juice is today. We can consider expanding it a little bit, to wherever the edge is, or not, yeah. But that's where the meditation piece comes in. That's where that third level comes in, that we experiment. And, Tunisra says we do trial and error. And I would propose that sometimes when we get stuck, that we're forgetting ourselves. We're trying to kind of impose some kind of view or expectation on ourselves. I should be able to do it this way. And that we maybe begin to bring the inquiry back home a little bit and look to see, am I attached to some lofty idea here? Is there some, clinging to view that I could let go of, and just maybe I need to bring myself a cup of tea in order to have, the energy to do whatever it is that's called for. So I want to read you one last quote. And this is, there are two actually. Let's see. Two from Stephen Levine. Someone, I don't remember the quote exactly, but someone once asked him how he could be so loving. And his response was something along the lines of, it's because I know so much about being not loving. It's just to say, I practice with it so much. Gil Fronsdale says, you may need to put someone out of your company, your monastery, your bed, but the practice involves not putting anyone out of your heart. So again, this has nothing to do about the boundaries, but how we go about navigating them. Boundaries are essential. Okay, and here's the last quote from Stephen Levine. He says, there's a story about an intellectual youth who felt he could learn everything from books. He read about the stars and became an astronomer. He read about history and became a historian. He read about swimming and drowned. Some things we can only learn by wading in slowly from the direct experience of the ocean of being lapping against our body. To enter this process directly is to participate in the healing we took birth for, is to become fully alive. The secret of healing is there is no secret at all. Healing is an open book. You are now on page 13. So here we all are, hanging out together on page 13. Look around again. Here are the friends we have, and when we get stuck, we help each other. We remind each other, darling, we're all just hanging out here on page 13. So thank you.